That did not go on the air, by the way. Yes, I'm sneaky. I'm sneaky. You out there in the audience are never going to know what I just told the engineer. So, and that will make my life a lot more peaceful when wait till I get you home time comes along.
He who controls the soundboard.
That's right. Or in this case, she.
It does get into the power of broadband and how we need community broadband. All of this.
Well, yes, we do need broadband, but we don't need it on unshielded electrical power lines where that's another issue with this whole idea of broadband over power line.
No, I meant community ownership, not corporate. That's what I meant.
Right. Well, that is a slightly different issue, but you definitely don't want to be, because the power companies are trying to sell this new digital technology as being, as enabling a different carrier for broadband over the power lines. The problem is, and the FCC has done no end of compromising and bending over backwards for the power companies at the expense of all kinds of other communications, including broadcast, amateur radio, which is absolutely vital during an emergency situation, and all kinds of other issues where our rights to use the spectrum, be it over the air or be it through a wire, is being compromised by these kind of gadgets that are being installed that we don't completely understand. Now, before we go on to my question about Central Hudson and that they had abandoned it because apparently so many people have objected to it, that those of us who have objected to the digital meters were not alone. There were apparently enough people, at least in this part of the country, that are familiar enough with the state of technology to reject them out of hand. But before we get to discussing that, I'd like you to talk about the event that you're putting on next Friday night, right in this community center, so we can get people in the mood to come down and see the movie and be a part of the discussion.
Awesome. Yeah, we're very fortunate to have this event take place. And that is, I got the permission to screen a new movie that's coming out. It's not finished yet. It's about 70 minutes of it is finished, and we're going to get it soon. And we plan on screening the movie at the Woodstock Community Center, April 19th, 7 o'clock. The movie will start at 7 o'clock. Admission is free. Donations, of course, accepted toward the film producers finishing the movie. And
I'll say what the movie's called.
Oh yeah, and the name of the movie, the name of the movie is "Take Back Your Power: The Smart Meter Agenda Unveiled"
By Josh Del Sol.
Josh Del Sol. Now, if anybody wants to see this, a little trailer of this movie, they can go to takebackyourpower.net. And I was going to ask you guys if you wanted to play 4 minutes of that in your show tonight, if you can do that.
Yeah, what do we do? Pull that up on the
just
internet?
Go on the internet, takebackyourpower.net, and it'll come right up with the trailer immediately.
The other thing you should know about the event is we're following up the movie with a panel discussion. The panel discussion will have a Q&A, and that's following the movie. We're going to have two key speakers, both of whom are in the movie. One woman's name is Blake Levitt. She's an award-winning journalist.
Blake Levitt.
The Blake Levitt.
B.
Oh, B. Sorry. And the other person is Dr. Carpenter. He's a renowned professor and author at UAlbany. And it should be very interesting. We also have Michelle Hertz, who is a smart meter activist.
Love that name.
And Gary Alexander, who's a researcher and author, and he's also someone who is quite ill from the smart meters. So that's Friday, April 19th at 7 p.m. The movie will start at the Woodstock Community Center on Rock City Road.
And we'll look forward to being there. We will definitely be there. And we're offering right now, I don't know if we can, I don't know what exactly we can put together regarding it, but if the discussion is still going on after we get on the air here at 9 o'clock, we'd be happy to either broadcast it or figure out in whatever way we can coordinate with you guys on it.
That would be great.
Because-
That would be awesome. I was thinking to myself, I wish my show, before we met, I wish my show was on Friday night so that I could have broadcasted and had the event. But now that we've met, this is perfect.
Well, if we get the rights to show the movie, what we could do is, you say about 75 minutes of it, that's an hour 15.
70 minutes of it is what we have
So that's an hour 10, yeah.
for the screening.
We could actually, if you wanted to do it that way, we could, if we get the permission to show that amount, we could actually start it at 10 minutes to 11 and let it finish out right at midnight and have a discussion up to that time. Or whatever works, it's nice to have this amount of time to be able to be flexible with doing all of this stuff, because we do want people to realize, because in this sort of a situation, the only way to be forearmed is to be forewarned. So that when these people come around and start bringing these strange devices to your house, then that are going to do nothing but stray on your, spy on your property, then we do have, I believe, that segment up. Which channel does that come up on here? Oh, 5 and 6. Okay, so do you want to roll this this teaser?
Yeah, play
Okay.
it. Everybody will, you'll
They
give
can get
everybody a
feel
good
for
idea
what
what's
the
going
movie's
on.
like.
Okay, here we go.
You put a story out there, it's wrong, but what the heck? We're gonna go with it. We're gonna look you straight in the eye and we're gonna lie to you. What are you gonna do about it?
Is raising new questions tonight about the accuracy of PG&E's controversial new smart meters.
People all over the state have been complaining about inflated bills.
Her bill was $873.
Does not save energy, so smart grids miss the mark on energy savings.
It's all about money. We're going to be charged for time of use one day. It's coming.
And they're going to start having a profile of you as an individual. How you use your time, how you spend your energy, what you think.
Right down to the micro level. I mean, this is control freakery. It is the wet dream of the technocrats.
You've got massive data storage areas that never existed before, specifically to accommodate the accumulation of this kind of knowledge.
The next thing we know, people are walking up in the early morning hours to people's houses, taking off the analog meters and putting on the smart meters without telling anybody.
And now there are real concerns that they can blow a fuse, even explode, and put those homes at risk.
Half a dozen smart meters across 1 to 2 suburbs have exploded.
422 fires were discovered as a byproduct of the smart meter installation.
The smart meter had blown up.
It looked like it had exploded.
Hydro's billion-dollar smart meter program wrote back saying it's not responsible for any loss, injury, damage, or expense.
The evidence gets stronger and stronger that there are adverse health effects that these regulatory agencies can no longer deny.
I can't tell you how many people have called me who became dreadfully ill the minute one of those got put on their house.
The smart meter stopped my heart completely.
The smart meter was installed. Within weeks, the patient has a dramatic downturn in brain function. He was no longer able to walk. 6 months later, he died.
We've given them consent by being quiet. We can't afford to be quiet. This is a game changer.
People are rising up and they're finally saying, no, we have to take back our power in all sense of the word.
Pretty awesome, yeah.
On the East
We're going to be
Coast
the
to
first
show the
people on the
film.
East Coast to show the movie.
Oh, well, congratulations. This is something I would imagine, given the situation that we have here where what we read at least about a year ago or so was that Central Hudson was actually putting that plan on hold because of so much what they called consumer resistance, that maybe there's a possibility of actually getting in at the grassroots level and fighting this before it gets a chance to take too much hold. But when I was talking with you this afternoon, you were telling me a story about Woodstock Commons.
Yeah,
Yes, I'd like to talk about
Go ahead,
that
go
because
ahead,
please.
You wanna talk
it
about
directly affects one of my best friends who actually won the lottery with her boyfriend to move into Woodstock Commons. They currently live in Poughkeepsie.
Tell them what the Woodstock Commons is.
The Woodstock Commons is a place that was built for
Moderate income.
Moderate income. So, and everyone who was able to move in there, their names were basically drawn out of a hat. There were hundreds and hundreds of people that wanted to live there. It's located about a half mile up on a hill behind Sunflower Health Food Store.
Right behind Bradley Meadows
Yep.
Shopping Center.
And it's brand new. Everything's brand new. The facility's brand new. They were very excited about moving in because they've wanted to move back to Woodstock for some time, and they've been looking and they haven't been able to afford anything. And when we started finding out all this information about smart meters, the first thing I thought of after talking to some people about how they're automatically slapping these on new facilities, I thought, oh my God, Christine's moving into the Commons, the Woodstock Commons. I wonder if they have them, kind of knowing intuitively they must. So we actually did go up that evening and look, and sure enough, on the side of every single building, they have 7 smart meters. And there's
Wow.
probably at least 10 apartment buildings up there. So they have at least 70 smart meters up there.
All tracking what everybody in the Woodstock Commons is doing. And who knows how that much RF soup from those meters is going to cause people to have health problems.
Well, we actually invested with a number of other people. We got together and bought a meter that measures the EMF. First of all, to determine what was going on in our own home, in our own individual battle, but also with the mindset of being able to help other people in the community as much as possible.
How do you go about getting such a meter?
You can purchase it online. There's a place called Less EMF, and those meters are made in Germany. They're located in Albany, so a group of us drove up together and we were curious what this place looked like. So we drove up together and we purchased one there. It costs around $500. It's a pretty accurate measurement. You can purchase equipment that's more expensive and probably a little more accurate, but it certainly meets the needs of what we were requiring. And we took that meter to Woodstock Commons, of course, with my friend and her boyfriend, and the measurements were off the chart. It was ridiculous. And what happens with smart meters, another unfortunate side effect, so to speak, is that it ends up getting into the wiring inside of the house. They call it dirty electricity. And we also purchased a meter to measure. Yes, we also purchased a meter to measure their electric outlets, and their outlets were just extremely high.
Let me just show this book here. It's a very valuable book to have. It's called Dirty Electricity. It talks a lot, not so much about the smart meters, but about the various things that can happen with power that end up being. It's by Samuel Millam, MD, MPH, whatever that, miles per hour. But at any rate, it's there's a lot of information that you can find out in Dirty Electricity about why you may have so much trouble listening to the radio or doing any one of a number of tasks. The electricity around here can vary from being absolutely clean Like surprisingly enough, we've done some tests in this studio, and at least in the lower frequencies, there's very little emissions from this studio. But yet, if you go up on the mountain, on Meads Mountain here, especially the cable systems leak like mad. The grounds for the power systems and the neutrals in Woodstock are so aged, and like everything else in this town, are getting to be more and more decrepit as time goes on. They're just, it's not a good idea to, on top of all of the problems that our power grid has, to start using it as a communication system. One question I would have about the results you got from the meters, did you see an actual variance in intensity as you were watching it from like a fixed position to indicate that like the meter is transmitting? Does it show that?
Without a doubt, it pulsates. The scale was the lower scale was 0 to 200, and that's microwatts per centimeter squared is the unit of measurement. And an international agency that is used as somewhat of a standard for values of what's safe and what's not safe says that outside the house the value should be 10 microwatts per centimeter squared, and inside the house should be not more than 5. Well, outside the house, around the meter, was pulsating from like 20 to 198.
And sometimes it would go completely off the chart.
Start popping like popcorn and go off the scale. And it would do it like, every so many seconds. It would just like, it would go way high, then it would go way low, then it would go way high, then it would go way low. So it was definitely demonstrating that it was pulsating. And it was definitely way above what the standards that Germany and Austria have adopted some of those guidelines for the safe values, and other countries have too.
Now, I know that someone as prestigious and knowledgeable as Dr. Gary Null, who's going to be our guest here on the 27th, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, has done a number of shows on the dangers of pulse modulation. He's even very cautious regarding use of cell phones because they are also the same sort of digital pulse code modulation that these digital meters use. And so he's talked about this kind of digital pulsing from the standpoint that your body cannot possibly get used to it. When the first cell phones were introduced, they were analog FM cell phones. And overall, they took a lot more power and actually broadcast significant more power than a lot of cell phones do if they have a good connection to the cell tower. But they were actually far less damaging to the body than these pulse code modulated cell phones or other forms of medium to high power digital communication. In that, it's exactly what you describe. It goes from nothing to shooting off the chart, and then it goes down again, and it shoots off the chart. And the problem is that your body can get used to a steady state carrier as just being an environmental source of electromagnetism that we've evolved with over the course of hundreds of thousands of years. We did not evolve with the sort of digital pulse code spikes that you're describing here, and that each one of those spikes, and the reason why people get sick is because it causes a suppression of the immune system. The immune system is used to a normal, steady state of exposure to all kinds of radiation, and then when you get something like this just spiking, and it's doing it consistently, it's an irritant for the body. Not only does it cook the cells, but it causes stress just because it's a change in the environmental status.
Well, it interferes. The body has its own electromagnetic radiation, and it interferes with those signals. For example, the reason that they say that it does its most damage is when you're sleeping. And the reason for that is because when you're sleeping and the pineal gland knows that there's no light coming into it, it sends a signal to the melatonin producers to go out and scrub clean any cancer cells in the body. And when a person is in a range of electromagnetic radiation, it interferes with that, and so the body doesn't scrub clean, and that's how where the cancer connection is. So it's pretty amazing. One thing I wanted to say, though, before you forget about, is the Woodstock Commons issue. When I was over there, when we tested our own house, it took a few minutes of me standing near the meter for it to pulsate, and then every time it pulsated, it would have a higher figure, and then it would pulsate down, and then it would get a little higher. And it took, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes before it got to that point where it went off the charts. But when we were together and we walked up to Woodstock Common, as soon as I walked near the meter, it went right off the charts. I mean, wow. It's amazing.
Well, there's 7 of them right in the same location,
on the
right
one
next
wall
to one another. One thing I wanted to say is there's a doctor whose name is Dr. Klinghardt. It's spelled Dietrich Klinghardt. It's Klinghardt, and he has a YouTube video that's very interesting because he's a doctor that works with chronic illnesses and with autistic children, and he's done a lot of studies around those illnesses with regard to the EMF situation, and in particular with smart meters. And the findings are just very sad. I mean, he's finding that some people have died that are chronically ill. You saw a brief message from him about that. But the video is very comprehensive about how this works and how it makes people sick. So what I would advise people to do, not everyone, in fact, probably not very many people are going to be as lucky as Randy and have Central Hudson come and knock on your door. What they're doing for the most part is they're coming when you're not expecting them to come. They're doing it intentionally. They're replacing your analog meter. I did bring an analog meter that we actually purchased, that after we sent out a set of legal letters, we told Central Hudson we would be taking off their smart meter and we would be replacing it with this analog meter. I wanted to show people what an analog meter looks like. This is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And you see the little wheel there that goes around that takes up almost no power to actually measure your electricity, and it makes the little wheels on top, those little the things that look like a watch space. They are in an order of magnitude, I believe, going across, and that's the old way, the traditional way of measuring your power.
Right, and the smart meters, obviously they look digital. One thing we found out too from Michelle and from doing a lot of research is that it's probably not a good idea to continue to just call them smart meters, because they're also telling people we don't have smart meters and referring to them as ARMs, automatic reader meters.
Advanced meter reading, AMRs. AMRs. They'll tell you if you call them up and say.
If you call Central Hudson, they'll tell you, no, we don't have any smart meters in Woodstock whatsoever.
But you go outside, look at the model number on your meter and Google it, and it'll come right up if it's a smart meter, and it'll say in the smart meter family.
And the other thing in terms of steps to take,
what was the initials again? So
AMR, Advanced Meter Reading.
Advanced meter reading.
So it's basically referring to them not having to send a real person out to read your meter.
Why don't we just call it the electric televiewer?
Yeah, that would be good. Well, there's not much honesty going on.
Before we go into that, I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
And that is what Raji was talking about before with Dr. Klinghardt, Dietrich Klinghardt. He has a practice in Seattle. He is German. He goes back and forth between Germany and the United States all the time, and they're more advanced in Germany on a lot of technical things. And for instance, they outlawed nuclear power in in Germany, and they're totally switching over to alternative energy. But anyway, Klinghart in the movie that Roger was talking about is called, and everybody can go to YouTube and see it, it's EMF-Health Crisis. That's the movie. Watch that movie, and there's one other one that's compatible. They're both excellent. The EMF Health Crisis movie is mostly an interview with Klinghart. The other movie, which we just showed on our show last week, was called Resonance Beings of Frequency. It's fantastic. It just came out last year, 2012. You must show that on your show, Randy.
Okay, yeah, it's a good idea.
They both, if you see those two movies, you'll have a really good understanding of what's going on with electromagnetic radiation.
Now, do these movies, are they specifically in the context of the so-called smart meters or the electronic televiewers? I think I'm going to stick with that description.
The Klinghart movie starts off talking about all kinds of things, but it ends up focusing on smart meters. The bulk of the movie is on smart meters in his interview and his information. The other movie focuses around cell phones and cell towers, but definitely focuses on the health effects of electromagnetic radiation. Right. And that's what you want to know, because that's really the bottom line. It's electromagnetic radiation.
Right. And it is all around us, but it's changed over the course of the past 15 years or so. As I said, from things that were usually pretty steady state, or they would go on, they would stay on for a while, and then they would go off. Far less body intrusive than the digital pulses that are coming out of all of these machines, whether they're cell phones or these digital meters.
And the other thing that's different, which I just want to reiterate, is cell phones we can turn off.
Right.
Computers we can turn off. These we can't turn off. We have absolutely no control over them at all.
24/7. They're running 24/7 on your house, pulsating.
And there's
usually around every 14 seconds.
There's three things to pay attention to in terms of why you don't want these smart meters. In my own mind, number one, as I stated several times, is the health issue. No one wants to get deathly ill or even die. That's the number one issue. The second issue is that your electric bill, and I'm assuming water and gas, we haven't even looked into that. We've just heard from Michelle that those exist also. All those bills are going to go up with no reason, basically. When we found out our electric bill went up, we get it every 2 months, we then proceeded to cut back even more than we already had, and our next electric bill was higher than the last one. We're now paying $150 a month for a small 4-room house.
Wow.
It's insane.
That's more than I pay for 2 months.
We heat with wood. We cook with propane. We're paying $150 a month.
Just in electricity.
Yes.
It's actually a 3-room house.
So
it's actually a 3-room house.
That's the second issue. The third issue is the surveillance issue. And we are, even though we believe that there's a lot of validity in focusing on that to some extent, just for the benefit of making sure that everyone gets on board and not scaring people off, we're trying not to focus on that quite as much. Because there are quite a few people who, if you start really getting into that, they're going to turn off and not pay attention. And in order for us to keep these smart meters out of Woodstock, we really need everybody on board. We really do. We need a critical mass.
And we, as Joe, who's not here tonight, is always saying, it's time for everybody to get involved and get concerned about these things. Because if everybody out there who really is concerned about these issues doesn't stand up and say, no, this has gone far enough and it stops here, then all of us, we can talk until after midnight, until we're green in the face and just not get anything done. We're doing this television and this informational programming in order to make you concerned about what's going on around you.
Same here.
Exactly.
And that's what the entire issue is. Now, one thing I'm concerned about, this information gathering and this meters. Well, first off, when you were talking about how high your electric bills are, have you actually been able to, or have you tried to, there are these meters, they're called kilowatt meters. That's just the name of the company that manufactures them. There are a lot of other brands that can actually take your electrical use, and it can give you a moment-to-moment digital readout on your own, plugging it into your master line of exactly how much power you're using. And some of the new models of these devices actually allow you to put in the kilowatt, the cost per kilowatt hour, which is usually someplace around now about the 20-cent kilowatt hour range, and actually compare your bill to what your actual use is, and then be able to subtract the amount of overcharges that you're getting because of the digital meter.
Where did you purchase that?
One of the companies that has them is Sea Crane. They sell radios. They're seacrane.com. And they also have an 800 number that you can order a catalog from. They have them in the back of them, at least they did at one time. But you can find them all over the place. And I would suggest that one of the ways of fighting these digital meters with the Public Service Commission, because ultimately, at least for the time being, the Public Service Commission has control over rates and tariffs that are charged by public utilities in New York, and they put out the manual as to whether or not these meters are supposed to be allowed or not, and if it's actually not in the PSC tariffs, then the consumer has the right to say that they don't want one of these meters if they're not in the tariff.
They're not, according to the Public Service Commission, they are not required. The electric company will tell you they are required, but the Public Service Commission says they're not required. Michelle Hertz told us that.
Well, if the PSC says that they're, because that may be one of the reasons why they backed off so quickly when they came by my house, because I did file a PSC complaint.
Oh, yeah.
And I have actually had, I actually had a situation very early on where I moved where I was, where Time Warner, yes, bite the hand that feeds you, or nobody gets fed by Time Warner or anything around here. We'd be as emaciated as a lot of health food people would like to see us emaciated as a standard way of being, if we had to rely on the food from Time Warner. But Time Warner wanted to put in what is called an alpha box right on the pole, right in front of my house. Now, this was way before there was anything as a digital meter or anything like that. This was just a wideband control box for the cable system. And I went into this tirade with the cable company saying, why have you put it on the closest pole to a house on this entire road where there are like 250, 300 different houses, and where it's a road that goes up the mountain, so there are a lot of poles and drops where they could put it where it isn't near anybody's house. So I was questioning, why have you put it near a house that literally is 20 feet from the road with the power pole right in front of it? And the answer was, oh, well, this was not selected by anybody in our immediate service area. This was designed by some computer out in Colorado. And I'm thinking, why would Time Warner have a distribution amplifier system that would be designed by some computer half a continent away? So they said, oh, don't worry about it. It's not going to affect anything. Famous last words, right? And they came and they installed this thing on a Saturday. Or they installed it on a Friday. Much to my objections. I had already contacted the Public Service Commission. They said that the Public Service Commission in that case said that they had a right to put the power pole there, or the alpha box. Soon as they turned the damn thing on, it had what is called a microphonic power supply. In other words, it hummed. It hummed all over my property. I had just moved to Woodstock to get away from the constant ringing and noise of motors of Queens and Long Island. And here I was in a beautiful bucolic setting, and all of a sudden, So I went ballistic the next week, and I think it was, I just stayed on the phone. I did not get off the phone, and I think by Tuesday they came out, and I actually got a letter from the PSC designating our power pole in front of our house as not to be used for any of these RF devices, because I told Time Warner at the time. I said, I'm not a subscriber. I get my television up on the mountain free over the air. That is my right under FCC laws, and you have no right to come in here and put an amplifier that's going to amplify your proprietary signals and is going to leak all over the place and cause me not to be able to, you're taking away something that is a commodifiable value to me, which is my over-the-air reception that I do not have to pay some provider for. So this went on for a long time, and pretty much I maintained the upper hand. What was that?
It's quiet enjoyment in law. You're entitled to quiet enjoyment.
That's right. Okay. So about 10 years later, after all of this happens, all of a sudden somebody is coming, and I made sure, by the way, that Central Hudson, who had installed an analog meter on the pole in order to measure how much power this alpha box was going to be charged to Central Hudson. About 10 years later, all of a sudden, where they had taken out the meter, there's Central Hudson again putting in this time a digital meter and on the pole. And I said immediately, wondering whether this digital meter was going to be a remote way of monitoring my electric use. And they ended up saying, no, this is Time Warner is going to put another box up here. And I said, no, they're not. I said, I have it on a PSC letter, because I save every letter I ever get that at all has any sort of legal implication. And I was actually able to find this letter from 10 years ago, and they were telling me initially that, oh no, Time Warner is going to be allowed to put up their box there. And I said, well, does this mean that the Public Service Commission is going to change ruling that it already made that I have in paper? Because if it's going to change a prior ruling, they have to show a substantial reason why they're going to allow that ruling. And ultimately, when I produced the letter from the Public Service Commission from 10 years later, they changed their tune again, and they said, okay, well, we'll take it down. But somebody's going to, people have to be absolutely just maniacal as these invasion of privacy companies are. The consumer has to be just completely defensive of their rights. And when it comes time to Woodstock, I don't know what to do about Woodstock Commons, but if it's supposed to be a place where people are supposed to be able to live who are of moderate income, then they should have a choice as to whether, especially since here the PSC does not mandate that we all have meters, then the people who are living in Woodstock Commons or any place else that have these meters should immediately file a complaint, a tariff complaint with the PSC, saying that the company is engaged in a harassment by monitoring everybody's power use in this way that's not provided in the PSC's tariffs. End of rant.
Well, I just want to talk about what the steps are that people should take in terms of whether or not you have a smart meter or you don't have a smart meter.
That's a good thing to do.
First of all, it's a lot of education. You need to educate yourself. Watching this show is part of that. There's a lot of information online. There's a website that we went to in particular so that we would take the right steps. I mean, some people have the approach of taking a baseball bat and smashing the meter. That's probably not the best way to go.
That's the Brooklyn way of dealing.
That's what I felt like doing.
Brooklyn solution.
The name of the website is called freedomtaker.com. There's a gentleman on there that seems to have devoted his whole life to this, and He actually sells these analog meters if you find that you do have a smart meter on your home. He also sells kits that go with the meters, which includes all types of legal documents, and walks you through the steps of who to send the legal documents
And a
to.
DVD and how to install it.
And a DVD on how to install it. So what we did was we went to this website, we sent a legal letter, which is about 11 pages long, to the president and the CEO of Central Hudson. We got that notarized and we sent it certified return receipt to both of those individuals. We also sent out legal letters, which I may have mentioned before, to the police, to the town of Woodstock Police, to the sheriff department, and to the state police, because of these incidents that are happening all over the country where police are choosing to come with the electric company in order to intimidate people and basically tell homeowners, yes, we're going to allow this person to come onto your property to install this. The other thing that's just as a side note that's interesting, if you watch videos on the internet, is all the people that are coming to install the smart meters have these masks that they wear over their face when they're installing them. It's
Protect them from the radiation.
No, it's because it's illegal.
No, they're
What
like a
doing is
plastic
illegal.
clear
I
mask.
have some knowledge on that. National Fire Protection Association, publication 70E, Electrical Safety in the Workplace. That's to protect from arc blast, because an electric service, there's no fuse control on the company side, and it can deliver hundreds of amps. And if he shorts anything out there, he can burn his face off.
Wow.
Okay.
Thank you for telling me that.
But I guarantee you it's
Facial
not
transplant.
legal. I guarantee you it's not legal, and foreclosure remedies are similar. You'd have to ask the electric company for the contract.
Yeah, I would think that this is, one caution I would have about this, though, is that there are certain long-standing legal requirements regarding the actual installation and calibration of even the analog electric meters. So when you're talking about selling people an analog electric meter and an installation manual, which, by the way, I am completely supportive of, the normal question as a homeowner with liability insurance when Ulster Savings gets around to actually provide it, but that's a whole nother story. But the question that I have is, what is the legality of actually removing one of these digital meters and replacing it with even a calibrated analog meter?
Okay.
I'll let Steve answer that.
Yeah, I'll answer that. Basically, the charge could be tampering with the power company's device. And what they have to prove to make that stick is that your tampering involves doing it to try to steal power.
Yeah, right.
And that's one of the things in these documents. It states clearly that what we are setting out to do, we are giving them a period of time from anywhere from 30 days to 5 days. We chose 14, and to come and remove the smart meter themselves. We don't want to do this.
And we're telling them the reason why is because we believe it's hiking our electric rates, and because, in my case, someone's ill in the home because of it.
But the thing is that what we're doing is we're telling them they need to remove it because of these reasons Roger just said. And so if they don't remove it, and they've got the legal documents where we forewarned them, then it falls under the category of self-defense, where we have a right to defend ourselves from harm. We have a right to defend ourselves from overcharging. We have a right to defend ourselves from a surveillance device that falls under the category of Title 18 of the federal law of putting a surveillance device on a property without a court order.
And you also have a right to contract with whomever you choose, so you should ask for the contract that says you have to do these things. You will find there is none, because the worst problem, when you started off earlier, Randy, you were saying it had been sold too many times. the electric company. The electric company is never supposed to be in the hands of a private corporation. It's never supposed to be outside of the jurisdiction of the Constitution, because these are resources that people need. This is common law wisdom in all traditions, not just our Judeo-Christian tradition. You don't deprive people of their resources. And you don't have to apologize for anything other than your loss of rights. Exactly. If they come in and they abuse a woman, and you can tell why he hightailed it only when he saw a gun, because it's not legal what they're doing. And the policemen are being forced by their superiors because of the economic meltdown to do things that puts them in harm's way, and they know it. It's terrifying.
Well, and they're also just flat out lying to people. They're telling people, we've found out about dozens of people now who have called Central Hudson, asked about these devices, and they're telling people they don't exist in Woodstock. It's absolutely not true. I feel like telling them, oh, really? Take a walk up to Woodstock Commons. Right. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, they're using the fact that they are unable to actually mandate them under the lack of PSC rules, and that, in fact, the project to convert everybody to these digital meters was, in fact, put on hold about a year and a half ago, as I said earlier, because so many people were objecting to them. Before we go any further from Paula's point, though, about ownership of the electric utility, which I certainly agree should be a common, there is a proposal, actually an offer has been made by a Canadian firm of questionable integrity, correct, to actually buy Central Hudson. Now, there have been some statements that have been made that if a Canadian company were to buy Central Hudson, then that would bring our power distribution system here actually under the auspices of NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, that would then, some people are maintaining, would take precedent over our local New York state laws and actually allow the Canadian company that would be the future owner of Central Hudson to actually do whatever it wanted to, and even if the PSC wanted to stop it, they would not have the power to control a Canadian corporation. I've wondered if you've heard anything about that.
Yeah, we definitely heard about the Canadian company that they're in the process of purchasing Central Hudson, and but as far as not being under the auspices of any United States agency, I don't know anything about that. But it sounds correct what you're saying, and we've actually heard something else about it, who the real purchasers of Central Hudson are going to be. And what we heard was that the Canadian company is a front for China.
It's a hearsay. We don't know that for
Well,
sure.
it comes from a pretty good source.
Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of Chinese money invading a lot of places.
But again, that's why you need to study the bank fraud and the mortgage, because they're pinning on the Chinese that they're holding the mortgages. But in truth, you've got to look at these trust accounts in the 30s that was set up. It's a big problem.
And one thing we heard
from it has a legal solution, and if you get off on the wrong step, you'll be in a jurisdiction where they're going to claim that you consented to it. And they're going to, in the eyes of law, not enter it into the record that there were 7 assaults on this woman or, you know, whatever. But he knew all bets were off once she came out with a gun. See what I mean?
She was funny. She said he was like a 250-pound man, and she said she'd never seen a man that big run so fast. I wanted to present something to Randy, though, about this letter that we got back from Central Hudson. We just got it a couple of days ago, and I wonder if he has any advice, not just for us, but for other people.
What we were just talking about before we change the subject, and that is talking about the external influences owning stuff in the United States. We also heard that every port in the United States is owned by a foreign country. The United States doesn't own any of its ports.
Oh, it's sold off all of its ports, and many of them are to China.
Yeah.
And some aren't. There was a big issue about Dubai buying, I think it was Port Newark, And actually, that one was stopped, I believe, at least for a little while, because of the so-called national security concerns regarding having a Middle East oil supplier actually own and control a major port.
But those sales weren't legal. They had no authority to make those sales. And what that means is and you see that throughout the ages, how you deal with fraud is how you deal with cancer. That's what cease and desist means. It means produce the contract or go away.
I'm speechless. And that's a rarity.
That's the power of community TV. I mean, it's by working. I'm astonished at your experience. Can you talk about more about your health journey? Because you look good now.
Well,
Is the meter off?
I'm a pretty overall healthy person, and I have found that since very soon after I leave the home, I start to feel better. And another thing that we haven't spoken about, which I did want to bring up, we mentioned this to Randy earlier today, is that Steve came up with this really cool invention to stop the emissions of the radiation during the evening. He went out and purchased a stainless steel pot, basically, that fits exactly over the meter. And he took screws and he screws it in at night. And we measured it after we put it on, and it brings it down to nothing.
Now, is this a grounded pot?
Yes.
Yes, it's a grounded pot.
And you did it with a big piece of wire, or with some of that copper strapping?
No, I did it with the grounding wire that was on an older meter that was there before this meter was put on, and the old box is still there, and I took the ground, it goes down to the ground rod in the ground, up to the pot. And
so in other words, it does have a direct run into the ground.
It goes right into the ground.
Good.
8-foot piece of rod in the ground.
You have to have that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's pointless. And what's happening with that is that in the morning, first thing, he has to run out and take it off because we don't want to bring attention to ourselves. But until we can get the analog meter back on, we don't want to bring attention to ourselves.
How many days has your
We gave them 14 days.
Gave them 14 days, but I want to get a few things in place so that we have refrigeration and we have hot water in case, because a lot of times,
we started seeing a lot of
times
where
they're shutting
turning off
people's power off if you do what we're doing.
For weeks and weeks and weeks.
You have to fight them in court to get your power turned back on.
We've seen films of people in court where they're telling the judge that they have small children and their electricity's been off for 7 weeks, and when they call, the electric company laughs at them.
And this is not for lack of paying bill.
This
is strictly.
This is for switching the meter,
this is because they switched
or refusing to have a smart meter on the house.
It's a punishment on the utility company's part.
See, that's exactly why it can't go to private corporations. That's why those sales.
Exactly.
Those sales were never lawful for precisely this reason.
I'd like to go over the response from Central Hudson to us, which is dated April 1st. We're not sure exactly what we're going to do with this yet, but it says, Ray, concerns about installation of smart meters. Dear Mr. Romine, I'm responding on behalf of Central Hudson to your recent letter concerning the possible installation of a smart meter at your residence. Central Hudson appreciates that you took the time to present your concerns regarding the consequences associated with smart meters, including the maintenance of your confidential customer information and any intrusion on your residence that may be necessary for this installation. First, Central Hudson has no immediate plans to install smart meters in its service territory. A flat-out lie. I hope this alleviates your concerns for the time being.
They're called AMRs.
Yeah.
Well, they're just going to use another name. If not AMR, they'll call it something else. The meters currently being installed by Central Hudson are digital meters, yes, that collect the same information as the mechanical meter.
Yeah, that's what they tried to tell me.
That may be installed at your home today. Second, Central Hudson cannot install any equipment, including smart meters, without approval from the New York Public Service Commission. The Commission is currently considering smart grid policy in case number 10-E-0285 and released its most recent order on August 18, 2011. This case reiterates the Commission's and Central Hudson's long-standing policy to protect customer information from dissemination to third parties without the customer's - your consent. Once the Commission determines how utilities, including Central Hudson, are to proceed to implement smart grid, well, first of all, they're saying they're not, now they're saying they are, customers will be required to cooperate with utilities to permit access to their premises to allow installation of this equipment. Customers have this obligation today, and they will have it tomorrow.
Customers do. Free citizens don't. Notice that.
Smart grid has changed nothing in this regard. Central Hudson service regulations at Tariff Leaf 52, approved by the Commission and available on its website, require customers to grant Central Hudson, and then in quotes, free access at all reasonable times to its meters or other property, and to all of the wiring and equipment installed on the customer's premises for the purpose of inspecting or testing same, or to repair, change, or remove any of the company's property, provided such agent exhibits a photograph identification badge.
Now, is this letter from Central Hudson?
Yes.
Now, there's something there.
Saying Central Hudson will provide its customers with education material and notice as required by the Commission as it develops and installs smart grid equipment. So now they're definitely saying they're going to install it. Central Hudson hopes you will find the education material helpful as you receive it.
Now, I have a problem. I want to go back to one sentence in there that's very ominously worded, and that is where it says the customer's responsibility is to allow Central Hudson to always have access to its equipment. But then it goes on to say, or any other equipment that is connected to it. Could you read that line again? Because that's stated in such a way as it would give them what the telephone company used to have, the right to come into your house and inspect to see how many telephones you actually had connected to your line.
Right.
They could, there's a line in there where they could inspect your entire electrical system, which if that's going to happen, you should have to hire an electrical contractor to do.
Yeah, well, Steve and I went on